Hi there. Thanks for joining me here in my little miracle readiness corner of YouTube. My name is natekokernot, and today I'm going to tackle the topic of diversity in communication. To do this topic justice, however, I first have to present two different interpretations of the word justice. The first is the ego's idea of justice, described in chapter 25 of A Course in Miracles. Quote, "There is a kind of justice in salvation of which the world knows nothing. To the world, justice and vengeance are the same, for sinners see justice only as their punishment, perhaps sustained by someone else, but not escaped. The laws of sin demand a victim. Who it may be makes little difference. But death must be the cost and must be paid. This is not justice, but insanity. Yet how could justice be defined without insanity, where love means hate, and death is seen as victory and triumph over eternity and timelessness and life?" End quote. This is a false idea of justice because it's based on a premise or an axiom that is incorrect in reality, that we are all separate beings with separate agendas. Justice can certainly get distorted when we cling to the ego's premise, because we will likely be seeking vengeance for our grievances, and we will believe in things like zero-sum gain, the idea that someone has to lose for us to gain something. That is actually a false premise if we all share one agenda. Now here's the form that justice takes in the Holy Spirit's recognition. Quote, "The Holy Spirit's problem-solving is a way in which the problem ends. It has been solved because it has been met with justice, and until it has, it will recur because it has not yet been solved. The principle that justice means no one can lose is crucial to this course. For miracles depend on justice, not as it is seen through this world's eyes, but as God knows it, and as knowledge is reflected in the sight the Holy Spirit gives. No one deserves to lose, and what would be unjust to him cannot occur. Healing must be for everyone, because he does not merit an attack of any kind. What order can there be in miracles unless someone deserves to suffer more and others less? And in this is this justice to the wholly innocent?" End quote. So the idea that a just outcome is achievable becomes more hard to believe if we hold to the Holy Spirit's standard for justice, that the outcome has to serve everyone's interests that are impacted by said outcome. We can turn to despondency and resignation if we believe this is impossible. But for people like Nate Hagens and the rest of the thinkers that he gathered together for that dialogue last year that he called the ecology of communication, it's not a question of how much harder it is to find this higher form of justice. It's actually their unwillingness to settle for anything less, any lesser form of justice, that makes it essential rather than impossible. That's what they're focused on, the necessity of true justice over the seeming difficulty of arriving at it. What this looks like in terms of our decisions and our day-to-day interactions is a willingness to communicate with everyone, barring nobody. We will not solve any of these supposed problems by withdrawing from communication or by further fragmenting and reorganizing ourselves into moral tribes that do not engage with the other tribes. We will not solve them by killing or canceling any voices that seem, on the surface, to be opposed to ours. We must learn how to listen to all the views on the topic at hand that come from all the various perspectives. There are little morsels of truth to be found in absolutely everyone's subjective truth. The greater truth is most likely just the sum of all the little subjective truths added up. Yes, paradox and contradictions will naturally arise in this, which simply means that the truth is far greater and far beyond our ability to understand than we thought it was when we were looking at things through linear thinking. Linear thinking is essentially taking a problem out of the context of the greater web of cause and effect, which is infinitely multidirectional, and trying to solve that problem on its own. This is the kind of thinking that the world is addicted to right now, especially in politics. We end up focusing on all the little symptoms of the larger problem, removing them or isolating them from the bigger picture, and getting involved in a game of whack-a-mole where we find new problems popping up everywhere as a result of our overly simplistic solutions to individual symptoms. The alternative is that we talk to everyone who may have something to say about this topic. They know better than we do how this decision will impact them or their communities, or at least what they fear will be the impact. Only then do we begin to appreciate how complex and multidimensional the greater system is. This will look like having the courage to enter into uncomfortable conversations with people whose worldviews seem vastly different than our own, with a willingness to be open-minded and try to see the morsels of truth in their individual truth. And this is even harder sometimes, trusting that they will be willing to be open-minded and listen to ours. Then both participants in this interaction will learn something, and we will inch closer to the formation of an outcome that will be just. As a lifelong progressive Democrat, I knew when cancel culture arrived in the woke movement just a few years ago that it was a mistake. I just knew at the time this would come back to bite the progressives in the ass, and now it is doing just that as people are more afraid than ever to speak up about the things they see that are clearly unjust for fear that they might be hauled away by ICE. And we can't really complain about it so much since we tried doing it to them just a few years ago. We can compare our mistakes and say that we didn't do it as aggressively or as violently as they, and that might be true, but the fact is, we made the same mistake, searching for means to peace that do not result in peace because they cannot serve justice. We all know by now, if we learn from our history, that shutting down other voices only makes those voices more desperate to be heard. It simply doesn't work, killing and canceling our enemies. Nothing could be more clear. When we step into the discomfort of potential conflict by being genuinely curious to hear the views that are different than our own, we all benefit from the learning that unfolds from engaging with our brothers and sisters as if they were perfectly innocent in their intentions, just as we are. As you can see, accepting the premise that we are all one mind with one greater agenda is the essential thing for each of us to do on an individual basis. A Course in Miracles emphasizes that the role of the miracle worker is simply to accept the atonement for themselves. Each of us as individuals are only responsible for making this shift in ourselves. We're not responsible for convincing other people to do it. It's hard enough to just focus on our own accountability in this. Trying to hold others accountable will only distract us from fulfilling our own part in the solution. So I hope that you're finding some of these ideas helpful, and if you do, please like and subscribe, and/or leave a comment below. I love to hear your comments, even if they're critical. I hope you have a day that is filled with blessings, and I will see you next time. Take care.